good morning. My name is Amanda Gethmuller. I am a mental health therapist in Spokane, Washington, and I'm a client of Cultivate and a huge fan of Carmen and her counterpart, Dr. Pam. I'm also a Dr. Pam client. As a mental health therapist, I find that talking about the cycle in relation to our mood is extremely important. And so for me, I wanted to do a follow-up video with some of the mental health mood stabilizers that go along with the cycle that Carmen just did, and then Dr. Pam and Carmen did Mother's Day weekend for, working with our hormones. So to start off, our cycle is divided pretty much into two different phases. There's actually four phases, but I'm really going to focus on the two different. The follicular phase, which is kind of the beginning, and then the luteal phase, which is the second half of the phase. So for the follicular phase, our estrogen is rising. So for a lot of us, and if you don't follow this pattern, don't be concerned. Hormones do react differently in each of us. Most of us, however, the first couple weeks during the follicular phase of our cycle experience the rise in estrogen. With the rise in estrogen, we are going to feel more energized. Just coming, you start your period, that's day one of your cycle. You're going to probably feel, the aches and the pains of that. Pretty soon after that, though, estrogen starts to rise up. We get a lot more energy, and we're kind of ready to go. With that, this is a good time to kind of start talking about goal setting, kind of using our creativity, where we want to go. And so for me as a therapist, I actually have women track their cycles. And so kind of in that beginning phase, what we do is we really concentrate on like, okay, here are my goals. This is what I want to do. It's more the design of them at this point in time, because if we start implementing them at this juncture, then we're going to be more likely to follow through on them. So if there's something that you want to achieve, if it's, looking at maybe creating more money, if it's, wanting to get into a new habit, if it is to lose weight or to stop an addiction that you have, this time in the woman's cycle is the time that we really should start addressing those things. And so just pre-planning for yourself. If you know, hey, in a couple weeks, I'm going to start my cycle. After I've started my cycle, that next week, 2 weeks there is going to be the time that you really want to kind of purposefully sit down and start planning these things out. With that being said, also you're going to become a little bit more extroverted than you would typically later in the cycle. Now, all of us have some introversion, extroversion. You might have done some personality tests that claim you're one or the other. But really what is found is throughout our hormones, depending on the level of estrogen and progesterone that's happening within our bodies, we're going to be more apt to be more extroverted or introverted. You still might have that baseline of introvert or extrovert. However, with the hormone rising in the first half of your cycle, you're going to be more extroverted. So for me, if I look at the calendar and I know, okay, here, is where my cycle starts, and then, for those first 2 weeks, what I typically do is I put a lot of fun, extroverted things on my calendar. Now, I'm naturally more of an introvert, and so for me, I'm not always wanting to go out and do things. However, I pre-plan and know, okay, those first 2 weeks, I'm going to be more social. I'm going to want to go out. It's really going to feed my mood to be around people, regardless if you're introvert or extrovert. And so I'll put on in those first couple weeks, a lot more social gatherings, a lot more activities with friends, going out and being extroverted. With that being said, we're just really consciously, cognitively using our cycle to set us up for success. With that being said, knowing that first couple weeks I'm going to be a lot more extroverted, I also know that once I start my ovulation, about 14 days into my cycle, I'm going to get a lot more progesterone into my body. Now, with the rise in the progesterone in the body, I'm going to get a lot more tired. I'm going to be a lot more introspective. This is a really good time to start working on self-care. And so in the second half of the cycle, I may be looking at more introverted things versus the extroverted that I did in the first half of the cycle. The introverted things that I will be working on are going to be more ritualistic, knowing like, okay, so this is my time where I'm going to maybe sit down and read a book, and sit down and do a art project, do something that requires some detail to it, because you're definitely more creative in this point in time, but maybe just going a little bit more into solitude in that time. On a spiritual side of it, it's a lot more time for reflection, for connection, and seeing kind of where you want to go. So for me and working with my clients, one of the things that I do is, just as we did in the first half of the cycle, then I flip it around and in the second half of the cycle say, okay, we're going to plan, maybe if there's a social gathering in the second half of the cycle, knowing yourself and knowing that, your baseline, if you're more introvert versus extrovert, then you're going to decide if, okay, I might not be wanting to do as much in that second half of my cycle. And I'm also going to honor, that body wisdom, which says, okay, now is the time for introversion. Now is the time for, creativity and kind of that healing, the cocoon before the butterfly comes out. So if I really plan for that, the social obligation might come, and I might say from the very beginning, looking at my calendar, oh, nope, that's not going to work for me that day. And really paying a lot of mind to that and honoring exactly where you're at within your cycle. And then also building in things so that you're not stagnant and feeling depressed, but building in things that this is my time, maybe that I'm working on those creative things, like I said, or that I am really organizing things in my office, or getting a lot more, solitude work done. So really paying mind to our cycle is very, very important, and it's going to help our mental health 100%. If we, try to force ourselves to be introspective during the first half of our cycle, it might not feel congruent and it might be really difficult for us. And so knowing where you're at in your cycle and then playing up to the strengths that you have at that point in time is going to help you feel a lot better. Flip side, trying to do more extroverted things in the second half of your cycle might be too difficult as well. So remembering that, these are not hard and fast rules, that not every woman experiences exactly what I talked about, but in the beginning half of your cycle with the rise in estrogen, you're typically going to have more energy. And then in the second half of your cycle with the rise in progesterone, you're going to be a little more sedated. And so just remembering those and then planning your calendar around that is going to be really helpful to your own particular mental health success. So hopefully this gives you some good tips, and I look forward to talking to you in the future. Thanks.